Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our big movie podcast. I'm Anson Chan.
And I'm Paul Morgan.
And today, I'm very excited to be reviewing Speed Racer.
And the Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
There you go. Alright, Paul, what would you like to talk about first?
I kind of want to talk about Speed Racer first, because I have a lot of thoughts on it.
I'm so down for this.
Both good and bad, so...
Okay, good. Because I only have good.
Alright, I'll maybe hopefully convince you otherwise.
Oh, please.
So, Speed Racer comes from the cartoon that we hopefully all know and love, Speed Racer, which I believe started out as a manga and then transitioned into an anime and then got sold to the US and redubbed for a US audience.
Mm-hmm.
It is basically the story of how Speed Racer, who is part of the Racer family, is offered a sponsorship by this big evil corporation headed by Mr. Royalton.
Yep.
And he has to effectively win a bunch of races to prevent Royalton from taking over the market for a certain race car / automobile part that they are trying to boost the stock in. Did I pretty much get the basic outline?
Basically. On top of the fact that Speed Racer is racing for his own pride and victory, but it seems that the system is very corrupt, and so he's attempting to kind of expose the criminal underbelly that pervades the sport.
Yeah.
There you go.
Definitely. So Anson,
Paul,
what worked for you in this one? I wanna hear all your good thoughts.
Paul, just about everything about this movie works for me. I'm a huge fan of all the references they throw into this movie, because I grew up watching the show. I was very into it. I even had a little, I guess, revival of my love of Speed Racer back in high school before the movie came out. And seeing this with all the little references in it is really funny, because there's nothing glaring. You would never really know that there were references to the show in it unless you knew. For instance, did you know that Pop's Racer is actually a champion wrestler? Well, they show that in the movie, but they also make a lot of mention to that in the show.
Yeah.
Or did you also realize when Speed goes, "Oh!" a few times in the movie, as a reference to him doing that all the time in the show? So I really enjoyed that.
He does that in every single race in the show, pretty much.
All the time. Oh yeah, like at least 10 times per episode. But did you know that the mafia truck that they use in the movie is a reference to the mammoth tank that he has to do a race with in one of the earlier episodes?
Oh, I don't remember that episode, actually, no.
Yeah, it's only in one episode, basically. But that's a reference to the mammoth tank.
They also had the Lucky Red Sox in there at the beginning.
Lucky Red Sox. And they also have Snake Oiler, who's actually a character in Speed Racer, which I enjoyed. So there's a lot of like little things that I really liked that they brought into the movie. I really enjoyed the overly bright, colorful sets, even though it was all CGI.
Saturated color.
But it was it was very unapologetic for what it was trying to be. It was very earnest in its goofiness, you know?
Yep.
And I can really respect that. I really enjoyed that. I liked how everyone had weird accents, you know? There was the Racer family, which is just your classic American accent. And they just had random Australian accents, British accents, Asian accents everywhere. Everyone, you kind of raise your eyebrow when they talk, because it's a different accent and it's fun to listen to. The CGI was both beautiful and horrible. Like I said, it's that earnest attempt at being something extraordinary, but it's kind of bad at the same time, which makes it all that more endearing.
Yeah.
It has the perfect blend of the absurd, bad, and great acting. Bad acting being Speed, basically, and the kid, and early Rex Racer. And then the good acting being Pops, Royalton, and Racer X, who is secretly Speed's older brother.
But played by a better actor.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically played by Judge Dredd, which I really liked.
Yeah.
I like the huge shift. Here's something I thought you would like. They have Cool Beans in here, just like your favorite movie of all time, Hot Rod.
Yep.
And I like the the first scene a lot, where
The race
the
where they splice between his school time and the race.
yeah,
Is that what
because
you're
it
talking
gives
about?
like a really quick background to who Speed Racer is while he's racing, the kind of tragedy that kind of befell the Racer family when Rex dies, quote unquote, but actually becomes Racer X in disguise.
Yeah.
Like that was actually it's pretty emotional, that first scene, which is surprising for how just blatantly campy and goofy this movie is, right?
Right.
So that was like a nice little thing. I also really like the scene where they, like I said, they had the mammoth tank or the mammoth truck, because you first think that's like in an office somewhere, this like really posh room with all these mafia people hanging out, but it turns out they've been driving this whole time, and then it just gets
Yeah.
even more and more and more goofy, like as the scene goes on.
Yep.
You just have to just laugh at just how crazy it gets, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. It's so good.
Yeah.
Like, I like a lot of the wipes that this movie has. Like, I know it's really
Where they
cheesy.
wipe with the character.
Everything. They always wipe every fucking scene, especially like during flashbacks. But it keeps the shots
Yeah.
really interesting, and it's really funny.
Yeah, that didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. Like, I liked
Yeah.
it during the first race, and when they were doing it with, like, all the announcers and shit, I thought that was really clever. And
Yeah.
then they, like, kept doing it every scene, and I was like, oh god, I'm gonna hate this by the end. But I didn't actually end up hating it.
Yeah, you'd think so too, right? You'd think it would be overused, but the way that they do it keeps it interesting, where it's not repetitive, because it's
Yeah.
not the same wipe that they do. Someone else
Yeah.
is talking. What they wipe to might be different. You know what I mean? So that didn't bother me. I actually, in fact, really liked it. The scene where I know I'm going to go on and on and on about how much I love it.
Go for it.
The scene where Speed is having to sit down with Royalton in his office. I love the way it was framed, where behind Royalton was like his map of the globe or the world and all his like business interests. And so it kind of shows like this is what Royalton wants. And then when they
Yeah.
pan to, or when they shoot to Speed, what's behind him is an engine, and all he wants is to race. You know what I mean? It's just so.
Yeah.
It's just, oh man, I love that framing. And then shortly after, Royalton's speech of "This is my religion," like money is my religion, kind of thing, was great, outstanding. It goes from being like just really crazy and like very fun to also being very serious, especially with that scene, right?
Yeah.
And again, like I said, the beginning scene where like Rex dies is very emotional, and he's racing his dead brother. It's very sad, and then they cut to the faces of Pops and Mama Racer or whatever. It's heartwarming.
Mhm.
And then this scene too is very emotional, very powerful. What else? This whole scene I really liked. And then like when Spiral gets caught, so then Royalton's like, throw these racer trash out, get them out of my building. And then like as they show the elevator closing on like Speed and Spiral just flips
the middle
off
fingers.
Royalton really quick, just like for a split
Yeah.
second, and then the scene is done. But they don't like hang on that. It's so funny because this movie just is is constantly just catching you off guard, which I
Yeah.
really, really love. I like the really weird 80s futuristic aesthetics that they're going for with like there's flying cars and like buildings that are like super futuristic with their crazy racetracks, but they also have like groovy wallpapers and like lamps and stuff that are just like of the 60s when Speed Racer was around, I think, or whenever,
Yeah.
It's just funny. There's just so much like little detail or thought that went into the design of this movie that I can just appreciate for just trying so damn hard to be something strange, and it works for me. And I think that's probably the majority of the things that I liked. Paul, what worked for you?
So I am gonna shit on this movie when it comes to what didn't work for me, but I think there is a lot to mention when it comes to what did work for me. So I'll just kind of go off the top of my head because I didn't write a lot of it down. So I know you disagree because you already said so, but I thought the actor who played Spritle was really good. He was actually one of the highlights for me.
He was surprisingly good.
Mostly because he just like he not only embodied kind of the innocence of Spritle that I remember from the cartoon, but he also had this kind of mischief about him that was like, I'm not doing this to hurt anyone. I'm doing this because I'm selfish and I'm a little kid and I don't realize how my actions affect other people yet. I thought I'm not going to talk about this until the didn't work part, really. But I thought for the most part, the directing was amazing. So, not the directing of the actors, because a lot of the acting was admittedly pretty awful, but the directing of the scenes. So, like, the way a scene sat, like, I guess one of my favorite instances of this is the scene where they're all in the pass and they have this big fight, with all of the mafia guys, and the tables get turned a couple times. Do you remember that scene?
In the mountains or in the truck?
It's during the big race, the middle race. Yeah.
The Casa Crista, okay.
So yeah, it's during that race when they get into the, the big pass in the what looked to be some sort of mountains, and the mafia guys, they take the mafia guy out and they're like, "What should we do with him, Racer X?" And he's like, "Do what he would do, break his legs and make him walk back." And then all the other mafia guys show up, and then Spritel distracts him for a sec, and then they get their guns, and then there's just this big fight scene. I thought stuff like that was really fantastic because it made the fighting as ridiculous as I remember it being in the cartoon. It's like,
no, yeah, definitely.
You wipe using a fight between two people to show a fight between two other people. Then you wipe with another fight, and then you see another fight. I thought that kind of stuff in that way, the directing was great. The way they could like show you so many things with so little narrative fat on it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that type of stuff was really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to paint this as something that worked for me as opposed to being just really mean about it. Everything after they stopped showing young Speed Racer, I found it very easy to be emotionally invested in, because by that time I had kind of caught on to the like, oh, this isn't necessarily going to copy the style of old Speed Racer, but it is trying to make it as ridiculous as the old Speed Racer.
Right.
And so the scene right before the cross-country race where Trixie and Speed are sitting in the car and they're talking about what they have to do and stuff like that, that worked really well for me. The scene where Racer X is telling Speed, like, you have to decide why you're racing, that really worked well for me. The scene, like, a lot of the races worked for me, despite the fact that, like, the cars looked kind of campy at first. Like, when I saw the preview for this movie, I thought to myself, this is going to be the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen. And that was based purely... It is, yeah, definitely, but that was based purely on the appearance of the cars and how they were moving and stuff like that. But surprisingly, after I got used to the style of the movie, that worked for me, and that was fine.
Yeah, super cool, right? Like with the really dumb gadgets it worked really and stuff that the cars
especially
have.
all of the kind of like, I mean, the Wachowskis are known for inventing bullet time, which they should always get utmost credit for. And there were all these kind of bullet time-esque slow-mo shots where, you know, he would hit the jump jacks on his car and do like a sweet flip over someone, and it would be in super slow motion. I thought that type of stuff was really super radical. So what worked for me was for the most part, the aesthetic of the futurism, the racing type of stuff, and then once I got used to the style, you know, a lot of stuff, like the fights, were kind of things that I really liked. I especially liked when Pops was beating up that ninja guy and you first see the wrestling ring again. I thought that was really cool. That just made me laugh because, you know, I like that they tried to make the fighting really campy and weird, and, you know, I think they did a good job of that.
It's just so unapologetically goofy.
Yeah, I like that a lot, so I don't know. Was there anything that didn't work for you?
I remember when I first saw this movie, one thing that didn't work for me was at the very end when Speed and Trixie are gonna like kiss on the victory lane, and they have that whole Spritel warning, or says
that
like,
didn't work for you.
Uninoculated. This time I didn't mind it, but when I first saw it, I was
okay.
so pissed off. I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Why are they
Oh,
ruining it?"
I
'Cause
loved that part.
as you know, like I don't like fourth wall breaks normally, with the exception of
Yeah,
Deadpool. So
yeah,
that's just another instance of it. But in this case, because they already knew it was coming and it happened, I was fine with it, and I thought it was one of the better uses of Spritle. But
yeah,
which is a weird 180 for me. But I guess that's with a lot of time. Speed's acting throughout the movie was bad, but like I said, that didn't bother me so much because it was alongside all the other good performances that just made his badness look even funnier. Yeah, I mean, it was something else to kind of laugh at on top of
yeah.
this ridiculous movie. Rex Racer's acting in the beginning really sucked. They probably could have had someone else be Rex Racer, honestly.
Yeah, let's actually just real quick before we go on with other stuff that didn't work for you. Let's talk about how the acting in this had to be super super stylized in order to function.
Yes.
Like that's why I think Spritle really worked for me, and that's why Royalton worked for me and Pop worked for me.
Hmm.
Is that like it seemed like those people knew, oh, we have to be very stylized in order to come across as complementary to the style of this movie.
Yeah, we need to be larger than life.
Yeah, and I feel like not all of the actors really got that memo. I don't know,
Who
like
aside from Speed?
Trixie fell in and out of good acting for me. I thought the actor who played young Speed was absolute trash.
Oh, sure.
That was like some of the worst acting I've ever seen in a movie. Spritle occasionally would fall into bad territory. Like there were some times where he was just so on point and in the style of stuff and just really, really felt like he was nailing it. And then there were other times where it didn't really work for me. Some of the Mafia guys, I feel like really, really like were hot and cold between like, oh, this is perfect for this scene, or oh, this is really awful. I thought the guy, the Snake Oilers
Snake Oiler.
guy,
Yeah.
he was really good. I liked him a lot.
He
I
could have been
liked.
played by Sacha Baron Cohen. He like had
Oh,
that
that
look
would've-
and he
yeah.
had that he had that tone
Yeah,
of
yeah.
just a crazy goofy dude.
Yep. I thought all the announcers in the beginning were great. The way they were like yelling in their own languages and stuff. That made me laugh a lot.
What about the ending when they have the black guy Bremerton or whatever his name is being the
See, that
announcer?
didn't work for me. Yeah, I feel like he was
Oh,
just
man.
phoning it in.
No, yeah, he was really bad. Again, for me that endears it to me because it's so bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like Tim and Eric level, but it's not like where Tim and
It
Eric
was like
manufactures
Tim and Eric in
awkwardness.
some instances.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh
why I
my
love this
gosh.
movie. It's
That's
just like
the perfect.
it's like
analogy.
watching Great Job, The Awesome Show, but it's still done really well because that's like watching David Liebehart be a race car announcer, just saying some random weird crap that has no bearing whatsoever that really didn't need to be said, but it just kind of makes you laugh because it just was so out there and it didn't need to be said. It was great.
But that's the thing is that like I like watching David Liebehart and it makes me laugh like my ass off. But the thing is that, and I will always feel negatively about Tim and Eric on a certain level for this. I feel like we're laughing at him because Tim and Eric are parading him around being like, look at this fucking freak we found. Not
Yeah.
because he's actually funny. Like they're maliciously putting him on screen for their fans to laugh at. And that's
Yeah.
what I felt like with the black guy in the very end. I forgot his name, but like that's what I felt like is like, oh, I'm laughing at this because this guy is fucking horrible at matching the style of this movie. And that's the way I felt about a few of the acting performances, so I don't know.
Okay. No, I
But
can see
anyways, go on with what didn't work for you.
that. Well, those were the two main things, were just the acting.
Yeah.
Oh man, Togo Khan's sister, her acting was really awful too. But in
Yep.
the same way that like I said, I like how bad some of these actors are, I still like her in it because she's her character was very underwritten, but it works for her just being really terrible in this movie because I don't think she could have done anything better to been like a larger than life character in that particular role. So her just being
Yeah.
bad works for me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, I guess my biggest gripes just happened to do with the acting. I feel
Sure.
the pacing was fine. I feel I loved the races. I like the effects and it's cheese. I really don't really have much more to pinpoint other than that, I guess. Paul, I want to hear what you hated about this because apparently you got a bone to pick.
I do have a couple bones to pick, but I mean, the way you're describing the way it made you feel makes me feel kind of a little bit negative about some of the stuff. So, I guess let's just jump into it. So, as I said, and I want to reiterate this so that everyone can know how I feel, the guy who played Young Speed Racer was a fucking trash actor. I don't know how he got away or got through those auditions because he was absolutely horrible and I hated every scene that he was in. I literally hated the first like 20 minutes of this movie because of that dumb shit. Anyways, so yeah, some scenes, like I said, are amazing, like the beginning. Some are just really poorly designed. So, like, I really appreciate, and I love that you also appreciate how ridiculous they tried to make this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things that to me are just inexcusably bad quality. Like, my favorite example of this is when they get to Royalton Industries and they're in the factory and they're driving on that, golf cart with Mr. Royalton down the hallway with all the segways. And the segways are going at like a ridiculous pace compared to their fucking golf cart. And I was like, you couldn't fucking match the pace of this. You had to literally just speed up the film of the segways so it looks all off and weird. Like, that was just so weird. What's that?
Did you see WALL-E?
No, I haven't seen WALL-E.
Okay. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but WALL-E has a similar scene where, let me check on that really quick. Because that's the exact same shot that WALL-E has a couple times in the movie.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. So like I said, I don't know if that was also a reference to something else, but I really thought that was funny just seeing like, are they ripping off WALL-E here? Kind of moment, you know? Yes, 2008 too. Funny. So I don't know if that. Wow.
So like, when I take that scene and I think, oh man, like this just looks really bad. It's not that they did a bad job. Like, I like the idea of having like hundreds of people in segways all coming and, they're all doing these crazy lane changes that seem like they would be impossible in real time. Yeah, it was definitely a choice, but I just didn't like how they were like, well, let's speed up all the segways so it looks crazy and manic. It was like, if you're gonna speed them up, make it look like they're going as fast as they are. Don't make it look like you just over or undercrank the film to make them, actually physically speed up and look like they're going too fast. I just didn't like little stylistic stuff like that. And then on that subject, there's also the scene where Chim Chim and Spritle break into Royalton Industries at the same time as Speed is talking to Mr. Royalton.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you have the camera placed in front of the golf cart.
Mm-hmm.
The golf cart is clearly meant to be careening, in and out of these rows and rows of segways that have to avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, the perspective on the green screen is so terribly off, like 90% of that scene, and it's like, you guys are whizzes with green screens. Like, you made The Matrix, you made V for Vendetta, you know how to use a green screen. Why would you not just adjust the perspective so that it doesn't look like a fucking James Bond movie from the 60s in a car chase?
Fair
it just
point.
like, it looked so low effort that it made me angry. So, there's that. There is... Okay, I wrote this, so I already said how much I hate Young Speed, but a lot of the school scenes with Young Speed seemed like they either rushed those or they made them overly simplistic. And the note that I wrote for that is that when you remember the scene where Speed beats the kid up for saying his brother should be in jail?
Yeah.
So let's break that scene down for a sec. That scene is made of 2 shots. One is from the perspective of the kid that shows Speed, and it's a close-up of Speed, and that shot's fine. The other shot is literally just a static raised pedestal shot of like four kids lazily clapping, going like, fight, 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 fight. And it was like, could you not put any less effort into this scene? It made me angry. It was like, you guys have all these gorgeous sets with all this saturated color and all this, really, really lush looking stuff around you. You couldn't think of something more interesting than a static shot of like four kids gathering around them with their teacher and saying, fight, fight, fight. Like, that scene was unignorably bad. And a lot of the school scenes were like that, especially when, and that's the thing is that, I said on the things that I liked, is that like the Wachowskis are great scene directors. They know how to put a scene together because they're visual about stuff. But it would be like a single shot of Speed at his desk, followed by him making that dumb racing face with his like eyes all squinted out, and then, it would transition from that into him driving one of his drawings, which is a really cool idea, but like, I don't know, give me more on that. I didn't like that part. And then, okay, this part really pissed me the fuck off, and I don't know why. I think it's just because it fucked with me. So when Royalton is explaining how Speed is going to lose Fuji and about the intellectual property lawsuit that they're going to file against his dad, they cut to the race in Fuji, right? And the narration stops for a little while. And then they go to the intellectual property lawsuit, and that, seems like we're back in the future, but then they cut back to Royalton Industries back to the past, so we've already been in the future, which is now the present, and then we cut back to their meeting at Royalton just to see the end of the scene where Spritle and Chim Chim get in trouble. I think that kind of cutting is inexcusable and unnecessary. You told us you were going to be talking about Fiji. We were in Fiji. You told us about the intellectual property lawsuit, which Fiji cuts almost immediately to, and then following that, we have to go back to Royalton Industries, and then after that, we jump back to after Fiji? Or
Let me
Fuji,
ask you
I mean?
this. How could you have cut that better? Like, what would have been
Just
more
don't
appealing
fucking
or
cut
nicer
back
for
to
you?
Royalton Industries.
Like, after they go to the present with Fiji?
Yeah, because it's like, I don't know, it made me mad because it was setting us up to like cut there, because we know already that Speed said no. We already got the amazing speech about all of Royalton's ideologies. And then after that speech, he talks about Fuji and the, you guys are going to lose, and then there's going to be an IP lawsuit against you. And then just don't cut back. I mean, I understand that you need to see Spritle and Chim Chim getting in trouble, because every time Spritle and Chim Chim get in trouble, you need to show how someone deals with that. But I didn't like that they cut forward and then they use scenes like Speed talking to that older racer in the locker room to kind of keep us in that moment, and then they just cut back to the past. I thought that was really ineffective kind of cutting. I think maybe they could have had Spritle and Chim Chim get in trouble before they cut to the Fuji race, but I don't know. There's something about that scene really bothered the fuck out of me. And this brings me to my last thing that didn't work. And I'm not saying this because it didn't work. I'm saying this because this is a theory I developed in watching this movie. So I am currently developing a theory that the Wachowskis do not know how to direct actors. I think
that's not a terrible theory.
Yeah, and I think that is apparent in how impeccable and wonderful and visually stunning their movies are, but how a lot of their movies have really shitty acting. So, what I would like to put forth as my theory is that they do not know how to direct actors, and that sometimes the acting in their movies is good because of the fact that they hire actors who are good enough to do the work on their own. So, let me use the following examples. So, in The Matrix, right? Keanu Reeves is already, he wasn't a good actor when he started, but he's been getting better over time. He was fine in The Matrix
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that he is supposed to play his character type. He's playing an incredulous kind of, I don't know what the fuck is going on type, type character. You surround him with actors like Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne Moss, Hugo Weaving, people who are just pros at acting, and they take the material and they make something of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Joe Pantoliano is great as Cypher because who doesn't look at Joe Pantoliano's face and say, oh, that's a fucking villain every time they say it? And he acted the shit out of that. Matt Doran, an unappreciated actor, plays Mouse. He plays this over-enthusiasm so well. They didn't need Keanu Reeves to be a great actor. They just needed him to be surprised by everything he was seeing for the first half and slowly realize his capabilities in the second half. And then, as Keanu Reeves is known to be very dedicated to training himself for the martial arts sequences and the gunfighting. That's example number 1. V for Vendetta, example number 2. The acting is good because they hired good actors. Natalie Portman is Evie. Hugo Weaving comes back again to voice V. Stephen Ray, Stephen Fry, John Hurt, Tim Pigott-Smith. These people are amazing actors. We do not need to direct them a lot for them to know how to get something out of a script. That is example 2. Now, examples 3 and 4 are going to get kind of hairy. Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending. Cloud Atlas is the story of, 6 to 8 stories. And let me tell you, 3 of these stories really hit me hard and really fucking, were amazing. And the other 3 were awful. Like, shit level awful. It's because the actors in them were great in the roles that they knew how to be, and they were shitty in the roles that they had no direction on because the Wachowskis don't fucking know how to direct actors. The example being Tom Hanks when he's the character who doesn't speak proper English and everything he says is like, you must speak the true because the true is all that is. Or like, so, it's like, dude, that character is not meant to be put on fucking screen. That character should have stayed in the book, and you can, do the rest of the stuff that Tom Hanks is good at, like Dr. Henry Goose. He was good at that. Hugo Weaving is amazing as Haskell Moore. Not so amazing as that weird fucking green guy he comes back as. Because why? He didn't get any direction because the Wachowskis don't know how to characterize an actor. The second example after Cloud Atlas is Jupiter Ascending. Jupiter Ascending does not have bad written content. It has shitty fucking acting. Mila Kunis is a good actor, but she probably didn't get any directing. She got told, here are your lines, here are the scenes you're doing, go do a movie. Channing Tatum is not a bad actor, as we saw in Foxcatcher.
Right.
But he probably didn't get a lot of good direction, and as a result, his character felt flat, and like he didn't know what he was saying half the time. Same with Sean Bean, same with Eddie Redmayne, same with any number of the actors in this movie. They just feel flat because the Wachowskis do not know how to direct actors. And that brings me to Speed Racer, wherein John Goodman worked perfectly for Pops.
Yep.
Emilio, what's his name? What's the motherfucking Speed Racer's name? Emil Hirsch. Emil Hirsch didn't do a great job, but he did a passable job because he knew how to be sad enough that we connected with him. He knew how to look driven enough without doing the fucking squinty-eyed thing that young Speed Racer does. Susan Sarandon is obviously great as a caring mom because she's a great actress. She knows what her character is. She can read into that in the script. Chim Chim is a monkey. He played a monkey very well.
Yes.
Spreadle
I think
was
he got
good.
his motivation. Here's a banana.
Spreadle was good because he was able to occasionally harness this sense that we got of Spritle in the cartoon, which is like, I just really want to impress my older brother, and I really want to be there for everything, and I really want to participate, but I'm such a fuck up, I don't know how to do it. You know, I think the acting in all of the Wachowskis movies is an indictment of their directing. Their directing of visual styling and their directing of scenes and their putting together of something visually is amazing, but I think they just don't know what the fuck to do with actors, and it ruins a lot of their movies.
That's fair. I think what you say has a lot of truth to it.
Yeah, it only really struck me after watching this, and I was like, it was especially during the first few scenes with Rex Racer, where you're like, does this guy know he's in a Speed Racer movie?
Yeah, it's like,
is this guy acting for Law and Order right now?
Yeah, right. When you say that, like Little Speed Racer and Rex Racer, like their scenes together were weird. Like, neither one of those two were, like, carrying the scene, so you kind of I can see where in the beginning you might be like, oh my fucking god, I hope the rest of this movie is not like this.
Yeah, and luckily it wasn't. Luckily,
yeah.
After the first 20 minutes or so, it got way better. But the first 20
thank God
minutes, I was like...
his death.
Yeah, I was like, oh, the first 20 minutes, they don't really know what they're doing. But then, you know, you realize they do know what they're doing, and you get more into it, and it becomes a really fun movie.
Mm-hmm. I think Inspector Detector, he had no personality whatsoever. I think they could have given him some better direction too. Because like he could have easily been a character as well. Cannonball Taylor could have been more interesting character rather than just a James Bond villain
as well.
Yeah, I agree. Because like all the other villainous racers had a shit ton of personality. Specifically, again, Snake Oiler, or
Snake
just like
Oiler,
any of the other ones that they
barbarians.
The barbarians, the army guys, or the whoever, like they all had a lot of personality. Cannonball Taylor now did not, and I think that might have been a bit of a misfire. I don't mind it, but I don't think he needed to be particularly straight. And I'm saying that just because of what you said, where they didn't have direction, where they didn't possibly have in mind a super cool way to make these characters, so they didn't give him anything to go off of. So he was just like, I guess I'll just read my lines then.
Yep.
Like, not to say that he had a bad performance. Cannonball Taylor's performance was fine. But just again, to what you're saying, I think that was just underutilization of the character.
Yep.
Teijo, the Japanese guy as well.
Yeah, I feel like he could have been so cool. I don't know.
Potentially too. Yeah, that could have been good, like better done. Or, because I don't think his acting was particularly good either. So, because I'm really thinking about what you said about the Wachowskis not being great at directing actors, and I see that a lot wherever there's a flat point in any, like I said, the hots and colds in the performances in this movie. I totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a matter of the actor choice, but then again, you have
I feel like some of
Burns
these actors
character.
could have been coached into the right performances. They just weren't.
I think you're right there. I don't think Ben Burns had to be as bad as he was.
Yeah.
The black guy. You're right. He phoned it in. They didn't want him to say, "Cut. Can I get another take of that?" What were you going for when you read those lines? Kind of moments.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's on a lot of people, that's a factor of them not having enough prep time. And I feel like everything I ever saw about The Matrix or about V for Vendetta was about how most of the prep time is just in the visual effects department.
That is so interesting now that you bring that to my attention to Speed Racer. That fills in a lot of the gaps now.
Yeah, I think that I was kind of waiting to drop that theory because I was really excited that I thought of it.
I think it applies perfectly to this because it like the overlap is almost perfect. I could see this like filling in every hole that I noticed. Or like I can't argue with any of that. It just makes so much sense now.
There we go. Well, Anson, would you recommend this movie?
I absolutely would. I would say, however, if you enjoy a little bit of awkward comedy and you like over the topness, if you don't take your movies too seriously, you'll probably get a kick out of this movie. I think it's worth it just for the spectacle alone. It's way better than like a Transformers where like you might throw up watching it or just get a headache. Like this is just mad fun to watch. And maybe
they managed to make all the chaos very congruent.
Oh yeah,
which I really like.
But I also liked racing stuff growing up when I was a kid, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. But
Sure.
bring some popcorn, bring a cold glass of milk along, and enjoy the fucking ride. I'll see you at the finish line. Paul,
There we
would
go.
you recommend Speed Racer, the 2008 classic film?
I would definitely say, yeah, it's worth a watch. I think for all the shitting on it I didn't give it enough credit for being like a really fucking interesting movie that really does it's like a good fucking effort at making something really hard to translate into a movie really interesting. Like, I feel like if any other directors would have adapted this, it would have turned out like Death Race or Death Race 2000. And it would have been this gritty, like, reimagining where they changed pretty much everything about it. But I feel like they did a good job of staying faithful to the cartoon that I knew and loved as a kid and making it a fun, schlocky, just time at the movies. I would have loved to have seen it in, like, a modern 3D. I feel like, this is probably made for people who are on some sort of hallucinogenic drug.
Now,
with all the, like, swirling
thing.
candy colors and stuff.
Oh, yeah. I love this, man. It's just eye candy. But
It is, yeah.
Having said our recommendations, do you feel that this movie was rightfully panned by critics and rightfully didn't make any fucking money?
No, because I think the critics probably either didn't watch the show or they were just, like, being hard on it. I mean, I think it was fun, and the fact that I, who am just a really cynical, hateful movie watcher most of the time, was able to find... Well, I mean, I don't talk about how hateful and cynical I am, but I mean, I'm a very... I watch a lot of movies with just absolute hate in my heart, just destroying them in my mind. The fact that I was able to find the fun in this movie by the end of it means that I think most people should probably be able to.
I'm glad you say that.
I'm very positive on this podcast because I don't want to hurt any chances I have of having a career in film. But for the most part, I'm just a really hateful movie watcher. I watch a lot of movies and I'm like, fuck, this is fucking horrible.
And we could edit that spoiler out for you, for your movie going or your movie industry friends out there.
Yeah,
in
right.
La La Land.
No, yeah, I think it got unfairly panned.
Yeah, I do too, man. Like, oh no, I think a lot of people love to hate this movie on par, and a lot of people just don't want to give it a chance.
I agree. I think there's a lot of taking stuff too seriously now that I hope ends soon in the movie world.
Speaking of serious movies in the movie world, what about that other movie, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Frost?
Ford?
He walks the path less taken.
This is a feel-bad movie, and that's why I love it.
I don't think so. I didn't get that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, just real quick, I'll go through the plot. It's about, spoiler, the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
Uh-oh.
So that's the plot. Okay, cool. Directed by Andrew Dominic, starring Brad Pitt as Jesse James, Casey Affleck as the titular Robert Ford, including people like Sam Shepard, Mary Louise Parker, Paul Schneider, Jeremy Renner, Sam Rockwell, and at the very end, Zooey Deschanel. And it was shot by one of my heroes, Roger Deakins, one of the greatest cinematographers of all time, who also shot A Serious Man.
Hey.
So, what in this movie worked for you? I'm not gonna. Yeah, just what worked for you?
I enjoyed the performances. I think I enjoyed everyone else's performance more than I enjoyed Brad Pitt's.
Yeah, he was kind of his standard Southern character, though I do think he deserves some credit for being a little more subtle than I think the character of Jesse James needs to be.
I don't know. I'll get to that one into my nitpicks.
Yeah.
I very much liked the ending. The last 20 minutes, the wrap up, kind of like spoilers, when Jesse gets assassinated. After, like, during the assassination and after the assassination, like, everything that takes place in, like I said, those last 20 minutes or so, I really liked the after story. the
Yeah.
story of Robert Frost and how he walks the
Robert
path less
Ford.
taken. Yeah, I know. I really like that now. I enjoyed the narration actually, because I know you say you don't like the narration, but I think the narration
Yeah.
in this movie had like a lot of poetry and a lot of interesting, uh, just interesting delivery. I guess you could say. I don't know, but
Yeah, I like the narration in this too. This is one of the ones I always forget has narration.
yeah, I quite liked it. I liked the guy who played Robert. Not Robert Frost. The other guy. Yeah, Frank James. Like, he was more charismatic to me than Brad Pitt was.
Oh, is that Sam
Cause
Shepard?
I think so. Yeah. So you giving me the willies now, boy?
Oh
Because
yeah.
he's trying to say how much he loves him. He's like, I don't know, man. I
Yep.
don't know if I should trust you. Like, there's something wrong with you, kind of thing. Like, he
Because
was a
there
more
is something so wrong with the character of Robert Ford. He's such a
right.
weird, creepy fuck.
He doesn't know what to be. He doesn't know what he wants to be, and
Yeah.
he's so laissez-faire that it like you can't trust that guy. I liked. I like seeing Sam Rockwell in this. Actually, I forgot that he was in this. He was the
He's
brother.
just a great actor, dude. I love
Yeah, he
Sam
fucking killed
Rockwell.
it in this. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I liked his performance a lot, and I would not put him with the other movies that I've seen him in. Like, this was I think this is a movie I've never seen him act like that before. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was nice to see his range in that,
Yeah.
and I love the Wild West aesthetics. Although
Oh yeah, they nailed those for sure.
I think this felt more like not saturated. What's the opposite of that? With like the charcoaly like blue
Felt more
filter.
contrasty.
Yeah, like I like the bright Western look. This was like the very
Oh, like the
muted
spaghetti
Western
Western look, like the studio
Yeah,
system Westerns.
yeah.
Yeah.
This was just like more like everything just felt like it was like a gray filter on everything, and I don't know if I necessarily like that, but I liked everything else aesthetically. I just didn't like how everything had a fucking gray filter or
Sure.
whatever you'd call that in the movie biz. Um, I I think that's about it. That I probably want to mention. Paul, what worked for you in this movie?
Well, I'm just gonna start by saying this is my second favorite movie of all time after There Will Be Blood. So,
Wow.
pretty much everything in this movie worked for me. But highlights for me in this movie are the violence. I think this is one of those movies where you have to be patient to get to any sort of actual like big action set pieces, but once you see the violence, it's so tastefully and like subtly done that it just really, I don't know, it really hit me in the right place. So like for example, there's a scene when Jesse dies, which I think is one of the all-time greatest movie deaths in my mind of all time. But then there's also the shootout between Woodhite and Dick Little in the upstairs of that cabin. And that scene coupled with the way Woodhite gets shot in the head by Robert Ford, which ironically mirrors his killing of Jesse James. That headshot is like one of the most, what I perceive to be realistic looking deaths I've ever seen on screen. I love the way that looks, and I love the way, there's just this like quiet desperation about these two guys not saying a word but just emptying their clips at each other. And because these guns are so old and inaccurate, they could be shooting point blank like they are and not hitting each other, except for at the very end. I think Woodhite hits Dick Little with his second to last bullet, and Dick Little hits Woodhite with his very last bullet. So it's like, I don't know, I love that scene. I love how slow and painful this movie is. Like, there was one part where I was like, I had something to do the day that I was watching this, and I was watching it, and I was in a part where I was like, oh, it's going to be over pretty soon. And I put my cursor down by by like where the play button is and saw that it was only halfway over, and I was like, oh yes, that's right, this is just like a drag through the life of all of these people, and like you don't get to rush through it. You don't get to take your time. You're just in it for the long haul. It makes you wait for everything, but in waiting, you get to see my next thing that I love, which is the characterization of Robert Ford, who is just a truly despicable character in my mind. And I love how despicable he is. He goes in to Jesse James's gang in the beginning with all these ideals about this guy he read about in his nickel books, and he even like tries to tell Jesse James about himself, which Jesse thankfully will have none of. And then he tries to infiltrate, the gang in order to be a part of Jesse's, grand adventures, which he soon realizes are not that grand and not usually adventures. And as Jesse loses his mind over, betrayals and stuff like that, Robert Ford loses his opinion of Jesse and starts wanting to be, getting some glory for himself. And then, as you mentioned at the end, there's this glorious part where he realizes all that glory is not going to come his way. Nobody cares what he did. Nobody respects what he did. He's just a coward. He used an opportunity for glory, and it backfired on him. People turned on him. Nobody cared about him. Not that they cared in the first place, but he went about something for all the wrong reasons, and it really hurt him. I love that so much. I love the story of this movie is so awesome and heartbreaking because, like, even though he's kind of a shithead, I do feel bad for Robert Ford at the end. Especially when the narrator says that line about how he wished he wouldn't have killed him. He wished he still had him to talk to. He missed the man as much as the ideal. I thought that was wonderful. Other than that, the acting performances are all great. I will counter your assertion about Brad Pitt. I thought Brad Pitt did a fine job. It's not his greatest performance, but it is a better performance than he usually gives, and that's coming from a very big Brad Pitt fan, so it hurts to admit that he's not always great, but he did a good job in this. I love the cinematography. Like I mentioned, Roger Deakins is a fucking genius, and he always makes the Coen Brothers movies look great, and he made this movie look amazing. That scene with the train in the very beginning is so gorgeous. Also, okay, the music I thought was amazing. They had that Jesse's theme that's like the little kind of tinkling bells and like the what seems to be like a metal xylophone or something like that. That's really gorgeous. Yeah, I don't know. I pretty much like just about everything in this movie, with very few exceptions. It's just a movie that you have to be very patient to get through, and that you have to really appreciate for its aesthetics and how much effort it went into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So what did you dislike about this movie? I'm really eager to discuss this.
Personally, I think this movie might have been too long. I think they could have cut a lot of it. Not a lot of it, per se, but just I think the 2-minute 40 runtime was a little extravagant for the story it told. I feel like not a lot happened in that movie to justify, again, the 2-hour 40-minute runtime. While you do take good long looks at people's faces and reactions to like a couple lines here and there, really I can't say a lot of what really happened. When they build up Jesse James as like that legendary figure that everyone kind of loves and respects, they don't really, in my opinion, explore that enough or show that with as much reverence, to the point where like Charlie, or whatever that guy, Robert's brother.
Oh, yeah. Charlie Ford.
Yeah, Charlie Ford doesn't, he feels that much regret over the whole situation, because that felt a little hollow for me, because like I said, it didn't explore really like them endearing Jesse James so much as they were constantly in fear of him and kissing up to him. You know what I mean? So I think that missed it for me. I found myself pretty disinterested with Wood Height and Dick Little, because I don't think they were given as much character development either, but a lot of emphasis was put on them, at least for a time. They show Woodhite, or not Woodhite. They show Dick Whittle like screwing his like dad's wife or something, or that whole
Yeah.
thing. But I didn't really care, honestly. Like, there was nothing in any of these characters except for Robert that I really found compelling enough. And it was nice to see the interactions between Robert Ford and Charlie Ford, because there was real chemistry and there was a story to be told in just the way they interacted. But with the other characters, again, with Dick Whittle and Woodhite, I just felt it was so inconsequential to everything else that was going on. Would Dick Whittle getting caught by the police, sure, I guess. That didn't have a moment for me, really. I felt Brad Pitt. You said this is like one of the greatest scenes of a death, when Brad Pitt dies, when he's like, am I misquoting you? Or were you talking about the scene in the
Oh, I think it's it's definitely one of my favorite movie deaths of all time.
Okay, when he's like getting up on the on the chair, like, oh, this sure is a dusty picture, and he's like looking at the reflection.
Yeah. Yep.
I feel like the way Brad Pitt delivered that missed a lot of brevity. I didn't feel that heaviness and the kind of like the anticipating chills that come along with a really noble or sacrificial death, one that is coming that and I didn't get that at that. I loved seeing Sam Rockwell's reaction to trying to bring himself to kill Jesse, and then I loved seeing Robert ultimately being the one who I want to shoot him. You know what I mean? Because he sees that Charlie's about to. He's like, no, I want to do it. That was interesting, but again, I feel it was robbed of any brevity. Because well, I better just put my pistols down so the police don't, or so the neighbors don't see. I don't know. I just felt like that felt hollow for me, and that's unfortunate.
You didn't see that hurt. You didn't see that hurt in Brad Pitt's eyes after he read the article about Dick Little giving himself up.
I did.
The entire scene leading up to that, I was just like feeling, oh my gosh, like he knows that any second now marshals are going to come for him. He knows the only way to avoid getting killed by, massive amounts of people with a big stake to put his body on, or marshals coming to shoot him down, is to let one of these guys kill him. He knows he's dead the second he reads that headline. That scene for me is just so heartbreaking.
So you found that more of like a scene of like Judah or Jesus like being brought to the cross kind of thing. It's like, oh, Judas, you.
Well, not really. So I guess for me, it's like, so Robert Ford has been growing up with all these stories of, Jesse James robbing from the rich and giving to the poor and being this like big charismatic figure. And the entire movie is basically dedicated to showing how he's not that. He's just the guy who's acting in his own interest. He robs people and he keeps the money for himself, and he just wants to live a quiet life other than all of his, murders and robberies. And then we see Jesse James start to crumble when he kills that guy. I forgot who he kills, what the guy's name
cousin.
is. But, he kills Ed Miller.
Yeah, that's it.
Out when they're on the horse, and he's like threatening Sam Rockwell. You can tell he's like starting to get scared of what is coming for him. And you can tell that like the only reason that Robert and Charlie Ford don't want to kill him is because they know he's a family guy who really loves his family. They don't, they're washed of any illusions that he is this big, charismatic, legendary figure by the end of the movie. And yet they still don't want to kill him because he's like become their friend, as Charlie says, or as the narrator says, he's a family guy. He doesn't, he's not out to kill anyone else. He just wants to get his past behind him, and he's just a normal dude. But he also knows, if I don't let these folks fucking shoot me, I'm putting my family and myself in a world of hell. And just that, you can see almost on his face when he moves the pillow to pick up the piece of paper that Robert put the pillow over.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, someone's hiding something from me. And then you see him when he looks at it and he's like, I just signed my own fucking death warrant. I don't know. That to me, it's so heartbreaking, especially because there's all this buildup where we see how he's not this special, charismatic guy. He's just a dude, and he made a lot of mistakes, and he's trying to cover for them still. And I don't know. To me, this movie is like so emotionally impactful because of how long it is, and like how you have to sit with these characters, and you have to sit with Robert Ford regretting things that he said almost within moments of saying them, and you have to sit with Brad Pitt becoming a megalomaniac because he can't control, who's after him and who sees him do what he does. I don't know.
I see that. And again, for me, that it just took too long for me to actually be invested with not enough in between for me to care. Like I said, about the majority of these characters. Sure. I wanted Brad Pitt to steal every scene he was in. Now, his character was written to, and the actors around him performed as though he was, like, this real menacing presence. Although, when you say Brad Pitt was understated as an actor in this one, I think that is so true, but not in the way that you say that's, like, good. Because Jesse James doesn't need to be even more aggrandized, I guess.
Sure.
Because the way that, like, so when they kill Ed Miller, the way he's acting toward Brad Pitt in that scene, Brad Pitt doesn't really change tones too much, and that could be part of the character he's going for, I get it. But it's neither menacing either, It's more interesting to watch Garrett squirm under Jesse James than to watch Brad Pitt be Jesse James making someone squirm, because he's not making anyone squirm. It's just the character has to impose or just intimidate in such a way. You know what I mean? And Brad Pitt doesn't have that. Maybe that's a choice, directionally speaking, where they don't want to show the actor giving that off or the character actually giving that off.
Well, if I can,
having
I was actually going to say I can kind of offer a reason for that, and I think that's the reason for that is that like everyone in this story is not only operating under their experience of Jesse James, but a lot of them are also operating under like, oh, Jesse James is the character I read about in books. So, and I think that's why Brad Pitt's performance comes off as really understated, is because he never is the character that they read about in books. He's just a guy. He's just a regular old dude. And all these people are taking stock in what he says as if he is the guy that they read about.
I find it,
in addition to, their experience.
It's hard for me to identify any character traits of the Jesse James played by Brad Pitt, aside from the fact that he's always awake when someone's awake, or he commands, like, he knows, if someone's sneaking around or moving around, you can't sneak up on old Jesse James. But like I said, as an actor, I didn't really get anything from his performance much. And I don't know if the more I say this, the more I'm starting to like, did I miss something? I don't know, because for some reason his performance didn't work for me.
Sure. No, I mean that makes sense. And the thing is that I don't think you missed anything. I think that
was intentional.
What I'm expressing, what I'm expressing about this movie is something I would express when watching like a Kubrick movie. Like, and by that I mean like they don't give you a lot, and so you have to make something of what they are giving you. And that's what I love about Kubrick, and that's also what I love about Andrew Dominik, the director who did this movie, is he doesn't really hit you over the head with anything, and in fact, he might not give you anything at all sometimes, and that's where the interpretation of the audience comes in. And I think one of the things that's tough, and this is where I sympathize with you, is that Robert Ford, Casey Affleck, you can read every emotion he's going through on his face, because Casey Affleck is a fucking amazing actor. But with pretty much everything else in this movie, you're given one or two things, and you have to make a lot of things out of it.
I see. I get that.
So that's what I think. As I think you're not missing anything. I think you're getting everything. It's just that for me, the fun is that in the 2.5 hours of this movie, or 2 hours and 40 minutes of this movie, a lot of time is spent on these gorgeous shots of nothing.
That's one of the things that I like about the Westerns.
Of like a landscape.
Yeah, but
yeah, and like during those shots, I get to think about what the fuck is going on with all this instead of just looking at the shot. And for me, who likes to like read into shit that is probably not there, that is like a recipe for me just really loving the fuck out of this movie.
That's probably goes to a difference in taste then, because I guess I wanted to see a crime figure like Jesse James. I wanted to see the character come to life, and I didn't really see that.
Sure.
If you were to ask me in like a month or a year, oh, how's Brad Pitt's performance as Jesse James? I'd be like, I don't know. Like, I can't tell you. I don't remember like what he was like. Just utterly forgettable. And for you, I guess the fun is in the dissecting of the little eye movements or the focus on the faces, which I get. But the character still doesn't pop in my mind, and I won't remember him as Jesse James. I'll at least remember Robert Ford, which I think the movie is supposed to kind of be about anyway. But
yeah,
like in that way, I guess I was a bit disappointed. And these are definitely my biggest gripes with the movie.
So not giving you enough stuff like that.
I just needed him to be more in command of the scene, as everyone else was acting around him to be, or as everyone, like, as the story was told or how it was written. I just didn't see that translated to the screen,
Sure.
Everything but him is saying that he should be this thing, but he's not. Which might be, in a very strange way, very well done. But for me, that just feels like a missed opportunity and kind of a misfire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's...
No, I think you're right. I mean, for me, that is very much what I love about the movie, is that he's not everything people want him to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand how that could be kind of underwhelming if you...
Yeah.
If you want him to be a big kind of character.
Yeah. So I guess, unfortunately, I guess this movie was a little bit of a bore for me.
Sure.
Was there anything that you didn't like
sense.
about this movie? Because I went on and on and on about my...
The only thing I can think of that I didn't like was, and I don't think this detracted from the movie, it just didn't work for me personally, is at the very end there's 2 scenes where they freeze frame, and I don't think that really worked for me. So there's that part where the guy is loading the shotgun and they push in on him and then it freeze frames for a second.
Oh yeah.
And then the last frame of the movie is a freeze frame on Robert Ford's face.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big part of me who likes... I mean, I like shocking stuff in movies. There was a big part of me that was like, I would have loved to have seen the guy who kills Robert Ford walk up to him and say, "Hey, Bob Ford," like he does, and then pull the trigger, and then it just go to black as we hear the gunshot. I feel like that would have been a much more
like
effective
The Sopranos
ending. Yeah, I don't know. Something about that would have really hit me harder. The freeze frame didn't quite work for me, but at any rate, I still love this movie. I think it's like a modern epic, the proportions of which we're unlikely to see for a very long time. What year did this movie come out? This movie came out in 2007, so it's funny because this movie, There Will Be Blood, and No Country for Old Men are 3 of my top 5 favorite movies of all time, and they all came out within about a year of each other. So There Will Be Blood came out in 2007, and No Country for Old Men came out in 2007. All 3 of these movies came out in 2007.
Wow.
And to me, they're three of the greatest movies ever made, especially made by American directors. And so I don't know. It is really crazy to me, the proximity with which these three were made, and I think between the three of them, they gobbled up just about every award you can think of. So
this movie lost a lot of money, apparently.
Yep, lost a lot of money, but also
yeah.
It was produced by Brad Pitt's production company, which he continuously pumps capital into. So I think it was probably a labor of love rather than a commercial endeavor.
I can get that. When I saw the production credits, I was like, okay, Brad Pitt did his own movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott also produced it.
I saw that
He has a lot of
too.
money,
I was
so.
very intrigued by that.
Yeah, I think between the actors and the technical people like Roger Deakins, Andrew Dominic, and then production crew, Dee Gardner, Brad Pitt, Ridley Scott, you have a lot of people who just really know what the fuck they're doing, and so it kind of struck me as a labor of just wanting to put out an amazing product, as opposed to doing something that was going to sell a bunch of tickets. I feel like this movie would do really well in Europe because it's very subtle and it's very long-winded and it's very kind of open to interpretation, stuff like that.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it got a release. They had a UK release, it
Yeah.
looks like.
It did a limited release in like some art house theaters in LA and New York and stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say it'd have to be. It's not very mainstream.
Yeah, definitely not.
Paul, would you
Definitely
recommend the Assassination of Jesse James?
I've actually stopped recommending this movie because so many people I've recommended it to have hated it.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I actually would not recommend this movie, but I do just want to reiterate it is my second favorite movie of all time. So
Wow.
I think it is one of the most amazing pieces of filmic content ever committed to celluloid. Is celluloid the right word?
I think so.
Whatever
I think
films
it's
made
cellulite, the stuff that makes your butt get wrinkles in it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Because you'll be sitting for so long eating all that popcorn, getting fat.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, I would definitely not recommend it, but it is one of my faves. Would you recommend this?
Unfortunately, no. I think it was a little too boring for my taste. I don't think it had enough redeeming qualities for me to point out to someone to say, if you want to watch it for this, go see it for that. Because especially for the length of time too, it's hard for me to say, yeah, I'm sorry I didn't like it as much as you did, but I wouldn't recommend it.
No need to be sorry. I mean, I didn't like Speed Racer as much as you did.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. I've come to terms with that. No one likes that movie but me.
By the way, can I say something about Speed Racer real quick before we wrap this up?
Hell yeah.
So this is something I actually thought about saying, and I even rehearsed this a little bit, which is, I think there are two types of movie fan, or two types of TV show fans as kids. There are people like Patton Oswalt, who is a famous comedian, who, for anyone who doesn't know, and they will watch a show as a kid, and they will absorb every aspect of it, and they'll be super fans for the rest of their life. I admit there are shows in which I am that type of fan. And then there's a type of person who will watch something and enjoy the fuck out of it and not remember a single thing from it until they get their memory jogged. With Speed Racer, I was the second type of fan.
Mm-hmm.
I probably watched that every single day on Cartoon Network with my granddad. And we both loved it, but until I saw some of the shit in this movie, I'd forgotten completely about a lot of it. The Red Sox, the Lucky Red Sox, Racer X actually being Speed's brother. Like, when Racer X was like, I'm not actually your brother, I was like, oh yeah, he's not his brother. No big deal. But then I was like, wait, no, isn't he supposed to be his brother?
Yeah,
I couldn't remember anything.
Like,
I forgot
every
that
episode
Pops was
that
a wrestler.
Racer X is in, they always bring up Racer X secretly Speed Racer's older brother.
Yeah, exactly.
Faked his own death and blah 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 blah. You know, they always say that every time.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, I was just totally accepting of that, and that's all just because I was the second type of fan with Speed Racer. I watched it all the time, and I just needed my fucking memory jogged. And one thing I didn't mention that I regret not mentioning, yeah, is the fact that I did get my memory jogged, and that's part of what made this movie so fun. So
I think we need an objective outside opinion, because I'm so biased to this movie. I can't tell if it's bad or not.
Also, though, I don't fucking want the opinion of someone who never watched the show, because they're not gonna get it.
I think there's enough to get if you enjoy schlock. You know what I mean? Like, this is supposed to be like a really dumb movie. Just enjoy, sit back and enjoy. But that didn't work for a lot of people. I just want to know, is it just because I'm so biased towards Speed Racer that I love it for that? Or did it just not deliver on that either? Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I'm so blind.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to ask around, see what other people thought.
Hey, all you there out in Radio Land, why don't you leave your opinions on the Speed Racer movie in the comments below? If we have that.
Tell us how much you loved it or how much you hated it, and
Yeah, and if you want to see
argue and call people names and stuff.
If you want to see the
really
assassination of Jesse James, let Paul know if you indeed thought it was as boring as Anson did.
You know what? Just don't see it, and I'll just live in the fantasy world that I occupy, where it's an amazing movie that I love to death.
Fair enough. 2007, the greatest year there ever was and there ever will be.
I know, right? Oh, God.
Let's go
Anyways.
back to those golden years.
Right? Well, anyways, I have been Paul Morgan.
I have been Anson Chan. Thank you for listening in on our Big Movie Podcast.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.